Welcome to Unsightly Opinions. My name's Tamara. Today I have another controversial video for you. We are going to be taking on PETA and animal rights activists who are opposed to the use of guide dogs. For those of you who are not familiar with PETA, PETA is the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. It is an organization that has served in the animal rights community for decades and has been at the center of many controversies. We are not just discussing PETA today, but we will also be talking about other fundamentalist animal rights activists who are strongly opposed to the use of guide dogs. Let me tell you what I think about all that. Let's dive in. At face value, PETA appears to be pure. Their intentions are good. Most people would agree that we should treat animals ethically. We should treat animals with care and respect. We should respect our environment, and we should not abuse animals. But if you dive into PETA's policies more deeply, you see a lot of fundamentalist behavior and a lot of hard policy lines that don't make sense in today's world. When you become fundamentalist about just about any viewpoint or ideology, things tend to fall apart because our world does not exist in nice, neat boxes. Just about everything exists on a continuum or a spectrum, and you need to have flexibility in thought in order to have people on both sides of the aisle come together and find a mutual agreement. I will be trying to link all of these articles down below so you can read them for yourself, so you can draw your own conclusions. In 2013, PETA wrote an article about their recipient of a PROGGY award, or a Progress Towards Ethical Treatment of Animals award, which they commended the University of Nevada for developing an app to help blind people navigate independently without the use of service dogs. Technology is a wonderful thing. Don't get me wrong, technology is an absolute game changer when it comes to living life as a blind or low vision person. But I have yet to see any technology, any robot dogs, or any accessibility app that would fundamentally meet the needs that I have as a guide dog user. So while I do commend the effort of working towards a technological solution for mobility, we aren't there yet. So to suggest that there's an app to fix blind navigation problems, there isn't. As a technology user and a guide dog user, I can say that there is not an app on this planet, there is not a robotics department on the planet that is yet able to perform all the duties that a guide dog would perform. I have used just about every accessibility navigation app there is, and these apps are not without their flaws. The technology simply isn't reliable enough to be able to use it for all of your navigation and mobility needs. That's why I use these types of apps in conjunction with my guide dog or with my white cane. PETA's next argument is that guide dog breeding programs significantly contribute to the animal overpopulation crisis. And their suggested solution is that we use shelter dogs or rescue dogs to be guide dogs and service dogs. While that would initially appear to be a really great solution to an ongoing issue that we as the human population have created, I don't know that it's as much of a solution as they believe it to be. And there are many reasons for that. To refute this point, I am using PETA's own numbers. They suggest that there are over 77 million pet dogs in the US. And I'm stating US statistics because they're the easiest to track down and they are quite large numbers. They also suggest that 3.3 million dogs go into shelters every year, and that is an alarming number. But let's now look at the number of working guide dog teams. There are approximately 10,000 working guide dog teams across the United States. When you look at 10,000 compared to 77 million, or even comparing 10,000 to 3.3 million, that's a drop in the bucket. Most guide dog schools have a pass-fail rate for their dogs around 50%. Some are a little higher, some are a little lower, but I would say it probably averages out to 50%. By that logic, we could say that there are 10,000 dogs that were raised or bred that did not become guide dogs. And that number of 10,000 dogs that need to be rehomed or adopted out that didn't make the cut as guide dogs is probably high. And the reason for that is many guide dog schools, including the one that I go to, if they have a dog that may not be suitable for guide dog work, they try and use those dogs for other service task roles. They may send the dogs, if they're particularly sniffy, to be diabetic alert dogs or epilepsy alert dogs. So many of the dogs that don't, quote, pass as guide dogs don't need to be rehomed or adopted out. They are simply career changed into other service dog roles. Absolutely, there is a population of dogs that were trained to be guide dogs that absolutely will need to be adopted out. But even if you take that 50% number of 10,000 dogs that need homes, it's 0.3% of that 3.3 million. I don't know how 0.3% compares to the other 99.7% of the problem. So I think singling out guide dog schools individually isn't fair. Alternately, many service dog schools do use shelter dogs to train for service dog roles. The reason that guide dogs are typically specifically bred for guide dog roles is because of the skills that they need to possess. Guide dogs have one of the more complex roles in the service dog community and the tasks that service dogs will do. You need to have a dog that is intelligent. You need to have a dog that is above a specific size. You also need a dog that's going to be friendly. You need a dog that's highly motivated. You need a dog that's gentle. You can't guarantee a lot of those things even when you're breeding dogs, but because of the significant amount of time, effort, and money that goes into these programs to breed guide dogs, the pass-fail rate would be significantly higher if you don't know what you're getting from a shelter dog. Not only that, but training for guide dogs needs to happen almost from day one. So you are desensitizing dogs to specific environments. You're trying to train them to look at the world in a slightly different way. And shelter dogs, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. Some dogs may be abused and have significant triggers, which would make it unsafe for them to work as guide dogs, because if they are reactionary or they're skittish, they aren't going to make good guide dogs, and it could be potentially life-threatening for both the guide dog and the handler if a guide dog bolts into traffic. PETA also takes issue with the fact that failed guide dogs or career change dogs take homes away from dogs who are in shelters. Typically, the dogs that fail out go to the puppy raisers or the people who donated their time to try and raise that dog, trainers at the school, retirees, people who want a dog who already has some level of training. So I don't know that you can necessarily say that this person would pick up a shelter dog if they didn't get a career change guide dog. I don't think you can necessarily conflate the two because there's more variables there than you can simply say, well, this specifically relates to that, because it doesn't. PETA's next issue is that guide dogs don't consent to working, that guide dogs are not able to socialize while working. And I would say that many people might have that opinion looking at a guide dog team from the outside, but just because you can't pet my dog in the moment does not mean that my dog does not get to socialize, does not mean that my dog doesn't get so much love and attention, does not mean that my dog doesn't actually consent to working. When I ask my dog Patience if she wants to work, her reaction is to jump up from her bed and come running towards the door. If that doesn't say, I'm excited to do that work, I'm excited to go out with you, I don't know what does. And one of the things that as guide dog users we look for in our guides is when they start slowing down or when they start losing their excitement to work. So that's the point in which they become pets. My second guide dog, Diesel, never wanted to be a guide dog, so he retired within 1 year of working with me. He made it very clear that he had no intention and no desire to be a guide dog, so he wasn't. We don't force our dogs to do things that they don't want to do. Do we have boundaries for our dogs? Absolutely. But what responsible pet owner does not have boundaries for their dogs? Ours might be a little stricter or a little more regulated, but that does not mean that we don't love our dogs, that our dogs don't get to play with other dogs, that they don't get to snuggle in bed. My dog has snuggle time in bed with me every single morning. So you can't come to me and tell me that my guide dog is worse off than a pet because she gets to stay with her human, with her pack, 24 hours a day, which is what she wants. She gets to go places other dogs can't go. She doesn't have to sit around by herself all day long waiting for her humans to get home. I would argue that my guide dog and most of the guide dogs that I know get a lot more love and attention and care than your average pet dog simply because of the nature of what they do. Because they are so expensive, because so much work went into training them, you have to give the same care and attention to making sure that they are happy, healthy, and taken care of. I would sooner go hungry rather than have my guide dog go hungry. So that should give you an idea of the level of bond. I am so incredibly grateful for her service that if there was something I could do to make her life better, I would do it. Speaking about specific individuals now, Karen Poreca, I apologize if I'm butchering that last name, who is the staff manager and editor for PETA, has gone on the record stating that guide dogs and service dogs, or guide dogs and even police dogs, are maltreated because they're not allowed to get snuggles, they're not allowed to go in the bed, they don't get enough love. And we've talked about that, so we don't need to go into that again. But her other complaint is that people who need service dogs should only get assistance from other humans. That's problematic on many levels. As an individual, I do not want to be a burden on someone else. I do not want to have to rely on someone else to meet my basic needs. Anytime I have to ask for a ride, I feel guilty. Anytime I ask for help, there is a level of guilt that I am putting someone out. While I know that's not typically how people react, that's how I feel, and I know many people in the blind and low vision community feel the same way when they have to rely on other people for assistance to get tasks done. What a guide dog does is it provides me companionship to do all of those things independently without human intervention. Not to mention that if I had a human assistant with me 24 hours a day, that the economics behind that would be astronomical. I don't know a single person alive who could afford to have live-in help with them all the time. I think a guide dog or a service dog is a bridge to that. You get the independence and the companionship without feeling like you are burdening another person. Do I feel guilty about burdening my dog? No. Most of the time, I'm not running around 24 hours a day. She doesn't guide me in my house. She snoozes. So if I'm at my desk working away, she's sleeping. If I'm unwinding in the evening, she's sleeping or chilling out or having snuggles. Her workday is no more vigorous than mine. So to suggest that I have to hire somebody is not realistic for 99.99% of the population, and I don't believe that there are enough people that can provide that work to make that viable. There are services like Aria where you can use augmented reality glasses and you can call a human assistant, but they are incredibly cost prohibitive to most people in the blind and low vision community. Now turning to Wendy Turner Webster, who is not affiliated with PETA as far as I am aware, but who is another animal rights activist, suggests that when guide dogs retire, disabled people can't look after their guide dogs. I think that's an incredibly ableist view of how disability works. Because there is such a demand for guide dogs, there is a huge wait list and a very intensive process to actually be considered and accepted into a guide dog school. You have to prove through your training that you are able to independently take care of your dog. What I see as the problem on retirement is that laws don't see retired service dogs as a mobility tool anymore, and that's okay. But the reason that most people have to, quote, give up their guide dogs on retirement is because of housing laws that don't allow them to keep their dogs upon retirement. I lived in an apartment building where they had to, by law, allow my guide dog Diesel to live and work with me while he was a working guide dog. The day he retired, I had to give him up because I was no longer allowed to keep a large animal in that apartment because of the regulations for the apartment. Not because I didn't want to keep him, not because I couldn't look after him, because the laws and the rules for where I was living did not allow it. So I think if we want to adjust the definition of guide dog to be a graduated working animal for the duration of their life, I think that would be a lot easier, and many more people in the blind or disability community would be able to keep their dogs on retirement, and then they wouldn't be going back to puppy raisers or adopted out. In conclusion, I don't want to be confrontational to people who fundamentally believe in the rights of animals, because I think that we should take better care of the animals that are in our charge. I believe in maintaining our environment. I believe in many of the ideals that many of these organizations are working towards, but I think taking a fundamentalist line is dangerous. If you have a different opinion than me, I absolutely welcome it. If you share my opinion, again, I welcome it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, but that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.